Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is connection and inseparability. And we're going to talk about the Akashic field that is validated or is currently um, conceptualized in physics of all things. So it should be a really interesting conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you joining us this morning. And to everyone else who's here with us, we're talking about connection and inseparability. And the nature of the universe is an age-old question for mystics and scientists alike, and everyone in between. And I just find it fascinating. I've been reading a book called Science in the Akashic Field, which I've by Irvin Laszlo, which I have mentioned. It might be Irwin. No, I think it's Irvin. Anyway, um, I'm finally getting to the meat of it, where they're they're in an attempt to explain the instantaneous transmission of information from one particle to another particle separated by vast distance, where the speed of transmission is something insane, like a billion times the speed of light, where there's this instantaneous communication. Trying to understand that, what they've come up with is this notion, which is ancient in yogic lore, of an interconnecting field that that is really essentially recognizing that all things emerge from this field or reside within this field that isn't bound by space or time, that it's omnipresent. And I may be representing this, not representing it with pure scholarly accuracy here, but it's interesting how with science uh, we kind of observe the pieces and try to break things into smaller and smaller pieces historically. And as what happens is we can become very myopic, and what then happens is, with these theories of different fields, like even gravitation, initially it was thought to be a property of an object, and then there became the recognition that all objects were subject to some kind of greater force, which was then defined as gravity. That it wasn't object specific. So it went from this notion of looking at isolated elements and then expanding into a recognition that there was some kind of unifying factor. And this is happening also with this notion of what could possibly explain these separate objects having an inseparability about their relationship to each other. So this is, I think it's what Einstein called, excuse me, my voice, called spooky action at a distance, where and a change in one element, whether it, a change in its spin, for instance, would be instantaneously reflected in another element that had occupied the same space at some point, that had occupied where they had been in the same space. They became entwined. They became what they call entangled. And then anytime any action occurs to one, it is reflected in a complementary way in the other, which is really, really fascinating. And what in the book, what's discussed is that this occurs not just on a micro level, but it occurs within organs in the body. It occurs within members of a species, which is really interesting. It occurs within in relationship of an element to its environment. And so I think we probably all heard of the 100th monkey notion. I don't know if it's non-urban legend or true, but the story of the 100th monkey is that on this island there were monkeys that were washing their food in some kind of particular way, and once there were a certain number of monkeys that were doing that, all of a sudden monkeys on a distant island started washing their food as well. And this whole notion of this, what they're calling the Akashic field, kind of lends credibility to the notion of the 100th monkey thing. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. So good to have you here this morning. So I'm just putting all these thoughts are floating around in my brain, and I find it really exciting to find a convergence of science and mysticism, right? Where mystics for forever have known that, of course, there's this information field or this field of consciousness, perhaps, that permeates everything. And what occurred to me in reading about this morning was, again, we're looking at the individual, what we think are individual elements, objects, and looking to see what connects them, and hypothesizing some kind of field that permeates everything. Whereas mysticism has said that the Akashic field is essentially the pregnant void. the I'm going to say intelligence or consciousness from which everything manifests, from which everything becomes physical, from which everything emerges. And so rather than the material being the truth or the reality, perhaps the reality is the nothingness from which everything emerges. You know, we talk about Maya and the illusion of this physicality in which we're so deeply steeped that we can't. I mean, I can maybe try to conceptualize the notion that this is an illusion, and yet I know, typically if I cut myself, I bleed, right? Or I feel that, right? We're very, very, very deeply entrenched in the physicality of things as the reality. And, it's this notion of information points to me that the reality that we perceive and believe in so dearly is really just a transient manifestation of a greater reality that is this pure consciousness that is whole and complete. And it's not a matter of transmission of information from point A to point B, because all of it is one point, one place, one moment. Physics has determined that everything exists all at once. Well, that would make total sense if it's all part of this one field, if it's all an expression of that field. And this is something we've discussed a bunch as we've spoken about identity and the notion that who I am is life expressing itself through this unique manifestation, this unique vessel. And so what if all of it is life expressing itself, consciousness expressing itself, flickering in and out of all different kinds of forms. So it's it's a different take, and it's nuanced, and I don't know if I'm communicating it accurately or effectively, to just recognize that it's not the stuff, it's the field from which the stuff emerges. And as we can connect more closely, more directly with being that field, it may be that all the boundaries of manifestation of the physicalness disappear, and we have access to manifesting the impossible. Because if we are that field, if there's no separation, if we're in that alignment, in the frequency of that field, everything is emergent from that field anyway, all the time. And all of our laws of science and nature are our attempts at trying to understand what it is that is operative. But it doesn't, it's funny that we call them laws, as if nature and intelligence and consciousness needs to adhere to these rules that we have developed, like energy, energy can neither be created or destroyed. Like there's a limited amount of energy. It's kind of like we used to think that there were a limited number of brain cells, and they start dying, and then that's where deterioration occurs. I just had this awareness this morning about science in a different way. Like science is us trying to explain what the heck is going on here. That's really what it is a bunch of people trying to figure out how does this stuff work? What's going on? What's the nature? It's like very, very childlike exploration, childlike in the sense of wonder, trying to figure out, well, what actually is going on here? And that's science in its purest. Science in its less elevated form is trying to prove certain stuff, to prove this idea or that idea or the other idea. And I guess, like there's a difference between trying to prove that you're right and exploring, testing, experimenting to see, what might be true. I guess there's a little bit of a difference between having this certainty and going out to find things that'll validate that versus exploring and trying to discover and being open to what might emerge. But this notion around the Akashic field, I remember one of the things that most impacted me years and years and years ago when I was kind of new to this consciousness journey was in a book by Deepak Chopra. I think it was called Quantum Healing. I think it was in there that he mentioned the pregnant void, which is Akasha. It's this pure potentiality, which is also what Deepak Chopra said in that book. And I didn't know the definition of the word Akasha at the time, but it's this field from which everything emerges. So if we can, as Joe Dispenza is helping people to discover, Joe Dispenza is like a master meditator and does all kinds of wonderful retreats to support people in moving into these deep states, transcendent states of consciousness, and is validating them through scientific means with brain scans and heart rate monitor and all kinds of things like that, and documenting transformations in health. What he says in so many of his meditations is it's time to become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, no time. And what is that? That's moving into this field, this Akasha field, from which anything and everything emerges. And seeing science, physics coming to, oh yeah, there is the ether, so to speak, this interconnecting force. And the thing is, I want to turn it upside down. It's not an interconnecting force. It is everything that is. It is one thing from which everything emerges. I guess it's looking at something from the top down or the bottom up. We're focused on the individual things that are separate and have their own properties. rather than the thing that is everything. And that those things are manifestations of, almost like sparks of light coming out from this energy field, all these different manifestations that we call physical, that have all these physical properties, that have all these quote unquote laws of science that apply to them, you know, and we take these laws as truths, and we take the findings of science as reality, when in fact they are efforts to understand reality, to understand what the nature of reality even is. And I don't know, I find it really stimulating to be looking at how folks who are trying to figure out what's going on are arriving at ancient wisdom that's been here forever, to say, here's what the universe is, and now it's a revelation to recognize, oh, here's what the universe is. You know, it's very interesting. I guess it, for me, the reading of this about physics and the definition of Akasha from ancient yogic tradition, and I believe that similar things exist in other esoteric traditions and understandings, teachings. It's interesting to me that science, which is another form of religion to me, it has maybe more specific parameters to define it, you know, in terms of proofs and such, but that there's coming to a blending, that there are bridges being formed that are creating a greater unifying notion of what's going on here, and that's occurring at a time when I think we can objectively say that there is an elevation of consciousness. And what is heartening to me, again, to go back to the 100th monkey thing, is as consciousness is arising, as more and more people are becoming more and more aware, that because of this instantaneous communication of information, like something is in the process of formation, that our lives are informing consciousness itself and elevating the field, which is something that we talk about a lot, and that we can potentially reach that 100th monkey kind of state where there's this massive transformation of awareness and of consciousness. So I find it exciting. I have a visceral experience of possibility. Well, hello, Bernadette. Welcome. You made it. I don't know what it took, but we've got you. Anyway, pretty interesting stuff to be validating the mystical spiritual notions that so many of us on a path of discovery and awakening have sensed, have touched, maybe have tasted, and to be able to see things sort of coming full circle, where the woo-woo is being validated by physics. And there's something very gratifying to me about that, I have to say. So that's it for this morning. If you want to check out the book, it's a lot of science stuff and pretty cool in that respect too. It's called Science in the Akashic Field. And oh my gosh, I have to go, so I don't even have time to read what you guys have posted, so I have to run. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel and my Facebook page, and I invite you to please like and follow both mine and Enlightened World Network's YouTube channel. Always a privilege to be spending this time with you. Until next time.